Why I get rid of these shoes? These are the Stefan Janowski or Stephen Janowski Nike SB, and well, they are green, that's for one, but for two, they also are Nike Air. And here's why I get rid of them. I initially wanted them like for a long time, but they were quite expensive, and buying shoes for 150 bucks was not something I usually did, only for running shoes when there were like no other options. So then I got these for 60 bucks. They were on the cheap, they were on discount, and this was the reason I bought them, and I liked them kinda. Before I had already Nike Free, but I didn't really realize that Nike Free actually were Nike's or Nike's attempt to barefoot shoes, to minimal shoes, and therefore I really liked the Nike Free. So I had like one of the first versions of the Nike Free, and yeah, I just got these shoes and I didn't even know about the whole thing about minimalistic shoes and what they even do to your posture and how you actually walk, and therefore I just stuck with them over the years. I just wore them again and again. I also wore them as gym shoes, but I realized that they were not really good as gym shoes because somehow, compared to being barefoot, now, of course, being barefoot. Why being barefoot? Why being barefoot? The thing is, your foot is kind of designed to have uneven ground. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And now the thing is about all of these shoes. I mean, you already see it. This is not even. This means your foot now doesn't stand even anymore. If your foot now doesn't stand even on anymore, and also if you just have too much cushion, the problem is that the data actually from the foot sends so the sensory data. If you put your hand onto something, you can feel everything, and it's kind of the same with the foot. Even though I do not know about the density of the kind of things that take the information in, so basically the neurons that take the information, not the neurons, but how much basically per inch you can feel. So in the hands, it's obviously very. So there's an image called homunculus where basically your body parts are as large as you can feel them, or therefore they are represented in your mind quite bigger. For example, your hands would be very big. Another thing obviously is that if you put your foot in a shoe like this, I mean, this is already kind of a shoe on the more minimalistic side, but the thing is, if you put your foot in a shoe and you have like rubber around your foot, if you actually step on something, you cannot really react to this because you only feel it, not very, you feel it only very damped. This means the actual sensory information gets kind of blocked. Now, another thing is that if you stand at an incline, basically your whole body depends on you standing not at an incline. So for example, let's just take this random bottle I have here. So usually this bottle stands straight and therefore it is made for a even ground. But what happens now, if you put the bottle at an incline, you somehow have to make up for this incline. This means, for example, you could place your hip far more, basically far so more far to the back, and then the thing is you just have to kind of make up for the posture you have because you are wearing a shoe that's putting you in an incline position, and this is something you shouldn't really do. So what actually happens is you don't really realize it until you get into the barefoot shoe thing. And getting into the barefoot shoe thing or getting into barefoot running is not really something that is very easy because actually what happened is you can't compare it to animals that grew up in a zoo and now have to live in the wild. Obviously, the animals that can live or that lived or grew up in the wild can live in a zoo, but the animals that grew up in the zoo, in this protected environment, they cannot just go and live in the wild, and therefore they often die if they ever come to the wild, or if the zookeepers are like, yeah, but we gotta release them to the wild. So now the thing is, your feet, with your feet actually it's the same thing. I'm just taking off my normal shoes. The thing is, if you basically grew up in shoes, running in shoes, or going in shoes like this, or walking in shoes like these, or even more cushioned shoes, or even more cushioned running shoes, then the thing is, if you now go to a barefoot shoe, or even go barefoot, the thing is that you just stop your heel onto the ground. And this is obviously something that's not very good for your bones and also for all your joints and also for your tendons and ligaments, because they are just not prepared for this load, because the load usually is dampened by the cushion you have in something like a 2 centimeter heel. Now, the thing is, if you now switch from these shoes, so these are minimal shoes, these are the Vibo Barefoot Primus Light 3, so you can see here Vibo Barefoot, and if you now switch from these to these and back again, what happens is this. This is what I realized like only a few days ago, but the thing is, if you go into these shoes, you essentially have a longer leg. Why? Because it's 2 centimeters longer. Therefore, if you now are used to barefoot shoes, because you usually wear barefoot shoes, at least inside, then there is just things in the way, and therefore you just are heel stomping again with these. But then, if you get rid of these, or if you change the shoe again, then you are not heel stomping anymore. Therefore, you are and you're not even hitting the ground yet. But then you are hitting the ground, and of course the impact then is again on your legs and on your spine, and this means switching from shoes like barefoot shoes and these shoes all the time is something you don't really want to do, because then you train, of course you also train yourself to be flexible. That's another point, to be flexible and to be able to walk in different kind of shoes. But the thing is that you want to stay as close to these barefoot shoes for the rest amount, so for the rest, for if you find out about this, and then it's only an optimization process, because this obviously is the better solution. Therefore, it only makes sense to stick to these shoes as long as you possibly can till the rest of your life. But if you then have these shoes lying around every now and then, you will use these shoes, and then are like, yeah, they feel pretty nice, and also don't have to pay as much attention to walking anymore. Of course, it only is a habit. Once the habit is established, you can also randomly walk in these shoes. But then you also can walk barefoot without any problem. But if you walk in these shoes and then try to walk barefoot, I tried to switch between these different shoes, and it doesn't really work, because every time you switch to a normal shoe, to a shoe like this, or to Vans, or to a normal running shoe, your foot actually, so this is what kind of happens. Imagine your hand is a foot. So usually, most of us have feet like this, and the big toe actually is most of the time cramped in and cramped to the side. How strange. But the thing is, if you now actually go barefoot or run barefoot or walk barefoot, then, it just makes sense to spread actually the foot. And this is what happens. As the foot gets stronger, it also gets bigger, because, this is just smaller than this. Therefore, what happens is that you actually also, for example, your calves will be on fire the first time you run barefoot. If you do a proper barefoot run and you already didn't really do these things before, then your calves certainly will, oh yeah, they're actually muscles. It's the same, it's the same structure, it's a similar structure. If you think about it, if you move your hand, actually all of this moves here. And if you now cramp the hand, if you had like one glove, then you couldn't even touch all the things, because you're like everywhere. The only thing you could do was clap, and it's the same with the foot. I imagine your foot was like this, and most of us have feet that are like this, and then you just go everywhere, and you're like, and you put your hand in shoes like this, and then you're just walking randomly around. And this is the reason why I will get rid of most of my shoes I have still left from a previous life where I wore normal shoes, because I realized that it's just not worth having the shoes lying around, because it just doesn't make sense. My whole posture suffers every time I go into these shoes. Like, my hip either moves to the forward or backward, and I don't really know. It's not that I don't really know, it's just that my posture is kind of not the best, even when wearing barefoot shoes, and it improves when wearing barefoot shoes. Also, if you're taller people usually stand to, because they want to speak to the other persons, they are like, yeah, hi, and they want to not stand up as straight as possible. Therefore, if you have shoes that don't have a heel with 2 centimeters, then you are just 2 centimeters smaller, I guess. Therefore, you kind of have to stand up straight and actually have to have a straight back, because then you are just bigger. And this also means that you kind of stand more in this position. You spend more time in this position, and this means a lot of other things, because with posture, a lot of other things correlate, like actual mood, because they depend on hormones, or the mood depends on hormones, and actual your actual neurotransmitter levels, but that's an entirely different story. So finally, why am I getting rid of these shoes? Because there are shoes that are not made for feet, but actually, I don't know what they are made for. It's not that I want to take like this whole critical approach to normal shoes, but the thing is, this is obviously the better solution, and therefore it just makes so much sense. I ran for years and I had problems in my knees and on my not not on my hips, but on the back of my knees, and also on my ankles, and then on my feet. For example, I had like this problem where my foot. So if this is my foot, then this was basically cramped in all the time, and then this thing, so the analogon on the foot was like just it just hurt all the time. Obviously, because there was no toe protecting it from hitting the outside of the shoe or the inside of the shoe all the time. Therefore, it just hurt all the time, and I couldn't do anything about it because I still ran in these old shoes and those running shoes where like bam, 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 and then you cannot even run that fast if you are not cushioned. And then you just have to run. Well, it's just an entire chain of problems that can be kind of at least be improved by not going with shoes like these, but with shoes like these. That's the end.